Good morning and welcome to my Q&A live. How's everyone doing this morning? Well, thanks so much for joining in so far. I'm hoping that this will be a fun session. I have limited messages to about every minute, just so that I don't get overwhelmed with trying to answer this as my first live. So it's a little bit rustic and not as fancy as I think I would like, but I'm kind of hoping that we get some more people. I have actually quite a few questions that people have asked, so it's kind of fun to spend some time with folks on here. Firstly, anyone got any questions so far that they can think of that they haven't posted yet? Well, if no one's got any questions right now, I'm going to start off with one of the ones that was sent to me. And I get this question quite a lot, but what is my favorite South African comfort food? And that's a little bit difficult because I have quite a few South African foods that I really like, but my comfort food, I think, has got to be biltong, and I haven't done a recipe on that yet. But I am planning to do that. I'm planning to do a couple of different ones on different biltongs and things like that. And for those of you that don't know, biltong is a preserved or dried meat product. So I'm really looking forward to doing that episode and sharing that with people. Someone wants to see the shirt. Absolutely. How cool is that? So if anyone is interested, I will quickly post the link to the store, which is actually right here on the channel. So you can actually buy this and other merchandise right from the YouTube channel now, which is really cool, including things like this really cool coffee mug and some travel mugs and aprons and things like that. So all right, so I have answered one question already. Also, remember, you can use things like Super Chat. If you want to support this channel financially, you can just hit on that Super Chat button and you can make a donation to this channel. And what it'll do is it'll highlight your question so that I can see that easily in the chat section. Let's look at another question here. This one was quite an interesting one, and I've sort of agonized a little bit on how to answer this. But if money was no object, what 3 things would you buy for your kitchen? That's really difficult to say. Honestly, I think one of the things I would really, really like would be a like pastry or pasta roller, but like the large size one, because I'd like to do some more stuff with like larger scale pasta, as well as things like fondant and things like that. So that would definitely be one of the things I really like in my kitchen. I was going to say a full-time chef, but I think that would be a little redundant, perhaps. But other than that, in my kitchen, really, there's not a ton. I think I would really enjoy having a larger cook surface. I think that the standard sort of stove is a little small now. On the show, of course, I don't use the stove that's in my kitchen because the kitchen layout is very small. But having something that is a sort of larger format with more burners, actually wouldn't mind, like in a restaurant, like having an actual grill there as well. I wouldn't mind that at all. Um, Other than that, yeah, a Viking Pro range that sounds pretty good to me. I wouldn't mind that. Um, Other than that, really, like there's a lot of like small things, but I'm not really a fancy person. I suppose a faster dishwasher would be great. Having sort of an industrial dishwasher would be awesome because then clean up and dishes wouldn't take so long. And that's my three things for my kitchen, I guess. Um, let's have a look through. I'm looking through the other questions. So if you guys have a question, feel free to just drop it down in the chat. Excuse me. Here's a good one. What is your go-to weeknight dish when you need something quick? That's a really tricky one. Usually it's pasta because I really like pasta. You can tell by my waistline that I really like pasta. I enjoy pastas. I really do. So I have a cheated bolognese recipe that I posted a video on previously, and that one I really enjoy, and that's it's a nice and quick recipe. So it's one of those ones that takes just a couple of minutes to do, and I'll put that link into the comments now so that you know which one I'm talking about. But really, it takes just a couple of minutes, and it's super straightforward, super simple, and really, really quick. There's a couple of others as well, but a lot of the quick recipes that I post are things that I go to when I'm trying to find something. It's quite hard sometimes to come up with ideas of exactly what it is you feel like cooking, during the week. But I always just go with one of the quick ones. I have a couple of staples that I sort of tend to go back to quite a lot. And if anyone is just three favorites. Well, one would be the dish that I just posted. Um, I think one of my other favorites. I really do like Swedish meatballs, so I do that quite a lot. And that's quite an old video that I did way back when I first started. And I really do enjoy like the bourbon chicken is another absolute favorite. I really like that recipe. It's one of my favorites. Um, those are my three favorite dishes, I guess. Um, my three things would be a chef, someone to wash up, and a box of money. Yeah, I really like that, Sue. I'm right with you there. Um, I don't know that getting a chef is not perhaps a little redundant. Um, Here's another question that was I think we all need a box of money, Eric. I really do. Um, what's a seasoning you can't live without? Well, if you eliminate the basics, the salt and the pepper and things like that. Um, Growing up South African, a lot of dishes that are traditional there, including things like biltong, use coriander. I would say that that's probably one of my favorite flavor profiles. And I do like the sort of depth that it adds to a bunch of dishes. You'll see I try and add it in wherever I can. And if I'm adapting someone else's recipe, usually I'll start, if I'm experimenting with it, I'll actually start with coriander first because that's just the flavor profile that I really like, and it adds a nice sort of depth to it. And it's something quite unique. You don't see a lot of that here in North America. So I really enjoy coriander. I have quite a wide range of spices and herbs and stuff in my kitchen. So I am going to be trying to do more and more of the fresh stuff. So, Otelia, thank you for the question. What started your love of cooking? Any particular moment, or was it a combination of events, moments, experiences? Well, firstly, I like to eat, so that's always a good thing. I've always had quite a healthy appetite. But I spent a lot of time helping my mom in the kitchen with preparing meals and things like that. And I I was really fortunate that mom was quite patient with me. So I really did enjoy spending that time with her and being able to try things out with her. And some stuff I didn't do as much perhaps as mom would have liked, but having that sort of influence was a good start. Plus, my grandmother who passed away earlier this year, she oh, Sue, thanks so much for the super chat. Appreciate that. Um, my grandmother as well was in the hotel industry, so I got a lot of experience with a family that had a lot of commercial cooking experience and things like that. So I really did grow up enjoying all kinds of different foods and all kinds of different preparations. So it gave me an interest, and it's been so cool coming to somewhere that I hadn't been before, where people's tastes and flavor profiles are just so different from what I was used to in South Africa. And so that's how the channel sort of came about, was because I wanted to experiment with different recipes and things like that, and try and learn more about the food from other cultures. So uh, let's see, we have another question. Excuse me. Do I toast my coriander before you use it? Sometimes, yes, I do, depending on what I'm doing. Um, Especially if I'm making biltong, then I definitely do toast my coriander first. It is it really does release the oils and more of that flavor. Sometimes in the cooking I will do that, but quite rarely. I always grind it by hand. I don't. I do have ground coriander, but I use that sparingly. I like to grind it by hand because I sort of like the chunks in there. I guess it is the best way to describe that. Um, Shinyeri, thank you very much for the question. So I have. I don't mind a little bit of sort of a peppery heat, very, very mild. I wouldn't say it's non-existent. I would say it's mild. I definitely do not like very spicy foods. Actually, I have a funny story about that. So many years ago, when I was a college student, I went with some friends to go and get lunch at a franchise called Nando's, which interestingly enough actually has some locations here in Canada now. But it's a South African franchise, and they serve Portuguese peri peri uh, chicken, which, by the way, is delicious if you get a chance. And this is not paid for by them at all. And I basically asked for hot chips, just thinking, French fries. But anyway, they put a very, very spicy, very, very spicy peri peri sauce on that. Um, so yeah, that didn't last long. I think I barely had one fry and gave it to someone else. But yeah, no, I don't like that kind of heavy spice. And it's interesting. growing up in South Africa and having a lot of East Indian influence and friends who cooked some amazing East Indian meals, and I've done some of those recipes before. Um, I really do appreciate a lot of spice flavor without the heat profile. I just find that the heat profile ends up distracting, and I can't really enjoy the meal. So, um, Sue, thank you for your question and comment. Love going back to your older videos and seeing just how much you've grown in your filming and editing. You've really developed. Well, thank you very much. That's very, very kind of you. Yeah, it's been a big learning curve, and it's been a lot of uh, trial and error in some ways. Even just figuring out camera angles for the what I like to call the food porn, right? The close up shots of the food and all that kind of stuff. Those can be quite a challenge, especially in a challenging space. And it's kind of interesting because I've had to adapt a lot of how I film based on where I'm at. And so right now, I actually created a full studio area that's nowhere near my kitchen, purely because the kitchen itself is not a great space um, for filming. It's very close, and it's very awkward angles, and I tried a little bit to film in there, and it's just not possible. So that's why I created an entire separate studio for that. So thank you for that, Sue. Really appreciate the kind words there. Um, let's see. More questions that came in comments on the live. Um, here's a fun one. We see you in all cowboy flannel. Are you wearing matching boots, sneakers, or bunny slippers? Um, thanks for the question. Um, so, interestingly enough, when I'm actually filming, I am actually barefoot. I'm a barefoot kind of guy. So the first thing I do when I get home is I take off my shoes and socks, and I'm a completely barefoot thing. I think it's a South African thing, where we spend 99% of our lives barefoot, and without having very harsh winters or anything like that. I grew up not wearing shoes a lot. Um, oh, Eric, thank you so much for the super chat. I really appreciate that. Yeah, pretty much barefoot and in the kitchen. I like to do that. I like to sort of feel the ground underneath me. And so, yeah, so usually when I'm filming, I am barefoot. I actually will be doing a brief behind the scenes, which I'll probably post either as a short or as a reel on Facebook and Instagram. So, yeah, look out for that in the next couple of weeks. Other than that, though, I'm actually a boot person. I don't. I have one set of sneakers for when I go for my daily walks. But generally speaking, if I'm going out anywhere, I'm wearing boots. It is pretty much how I roll, I guess. Oh, so if anyone's just joined, you can visit the store, and that link is going to come up in the chat in just a second again. Please feel free to check that out. Some other kind of cool things that have happened in the recent weeks, and with the sort of influx of subscribers, is that we now have memberships available on the channel. So you can check those out by clicking on the join button on the main channel page. and they started like $4.99 a month, and that's a really good way to help support the channel and the channel's growth. And no, Eric, no bunny slippers at all. I'm not a slipper person at all. All right. Yeah. Again, guys, thank you so much for the super chats. That's really awesome of you. I truly do appreciate that. Does anyone else have any questions that I haven't yet addressed, or that I may not yet address on from what I was sent, or what people have commented before? Feel free to go ahead and ask those now. If not, I'm going to just dive into another one. So this comment, this question, barbecue seems to be a big in South Africa and Canada. How are barbecues similar in both places, and how are they different? Any foods or meats in common? Well, generally speaking, and certainly when I was growing up, the majority of South African barbecues, and we call them braais, there are charcoal based, so they're an actual fire. So it's sort of a big process. It's a larger, longer, involved process than here in Canada. Most barbecues here tend to be propane, so they're very sort of quick. Turn it on and then heat up, cook, and done. Whereas a South African braai tends to be, yes, I would tell you, firewood and charcoal. It tends to be a much longer process and sort of almost a more social aspect around standing around that fire as it gets to the right temperature to actually grill with. So that's a major difference. As far as meats and things like that go, I mean, generally speaking, of course, there's all the regular meats that you get here, but we do have some different things like boerewors, which is a farmer's sausage, literally translated, and it has a profile of coriander, which I mentioned before. Definitely one of my favorites to enjoy on the barbecue. But really, other than the sort of very specific South African recipes, most meats and things like that are very similar. A couple of cool ones, and hopefully next summer I will. It's getting a bit cold out now to barbecue and grill, but hopefully next summer I'll be able to show you some of the things like braai bread and things like that, which is a barbecue bread, barbecue sandwich, and that kind of thing, which is just one of those things that I grew up with, which are kind of fun and enjoyable. So I think I've answered that question. Has anyone else got any other questions? Any other live questions? Yes, I'll tell you, you're right. So there are things like garlic bread and foil has actually become a little bit popular here as well. Although most people tend to use their oven for it, but yes, you can absolutely do that on a braai. Pop with the tomato and onion sauce, yes, and baked potatoes. That's quite common here as well on the barbecue. One thing that is quite common here as well is corn on the barbecue. And I don't remember having much of that as a kid growing up, just the cob uh, on the barbecue, but I've seen that quite a lot here. So, moving on to another question. Um, what would my recommendation? What would your recommendation or recommendations be for the best Christmas morning breakfast? Well, that all depends, I guess. If you've had your Christmas dinner the night before on Christmas Eve, um, then some kind of hash using potatoes and leftovers and things like that is always fun, or an omelet even filled with those. But I actually really like doing Dutch pancakes on Christmas morning. It's one of my go-tos, I guess, for a quick breakfast, and that's actually the very, very, very first video that I posted. So I posted that link down in the comments there too. So and that's really my favorite recipe, I guess. It's definitely one of my favorites to go to. And that's what I would recommend for Christmas breakfast. Um, excuse me. Now there's an interesting question. Um, what is the best way to tenderize a steak? Well, it all depends. The toughest part with steaks and cooking steaks is that it all starts off with the quality of the meat. I've really struggled recently to find good cuts of beef, even here in Alberta, which is a province that produces beef. And what I've discovered is that if you have a really good cut, it's a lot easier to get tender beef. The trick with a good steak is don't overcook it. A lot of people do tend to overcook their beef because they don't like to see the pink in the middle. And I think if you really want a tender steak, the cut is the most important. Giving it a good sear on the outside and then allowing it to cook through or heat through. Not saying that I don't particularly want it raw in the middle, but you do want it heated through. But you don't want it like shoe leather. If you have a steak that is tougher, that's a little bit harder. A good marinade will help break down some of that toughness in it. The important thing with steaks as well is timing. So you really want to make sure that you let that meat rest just like you would a roast or anything for about the same amount of time as you cooked it for. You don't want it it's not going to get cold in that time, but you do want it to rest after it has been cooked through, and that usually will help it tenderize. Thanks for that question. Well, here's a quite a cheeky question, but I actually kind of like it. Um, sometimes sometimes add more garlic. Well, always add more garlic than your recipe requires. What is your favorite garlic forward dish that takes the most garlic per serving? To be honest, it's not something that I've done specifically, and it's not really a recipe. It's more a kind of nostalgia thing for me. Um, when I was in college, there was a pizza place that served what they called a GI pizza, which I came to discover very quickly was garlic infusion. Um, and the pizza was quite cheap. And as a student, it was definitely something I could afford. And so I spent a considerable amount of money on GI pizzas. And basically, the pizza is literally your pizza dough, pizza sauce, and garlic, and obviously cheese on top. But like, I'm talking, a good quarter inch worth of garlic across this entire pizza, and no one would come near you for days because that's just how strong that garlic was. It just you became garlic for a few days. Absolutely love that. And other than that, there's no other recipe really where I put garlic in so prominently. I do try and control myself and control the urge to add way more, but I do like garlic a lot, especially in pasta sauces and things like that. Garlic is just one of my absolute favorite profiles in there. Yeah, Eric, the pizza was really good. And like I said, very cheap. I think if I remember back in the day, a large pizza was $10, and that was like, all of us students could afford. Um, Moving on, what is the strangest recipe or meal you've ever made, and how did it taste? Personally, I haven't actually made anything I think that would be considered strange. Um, I think I suppose the strangest meal I've ever had, or meal I've ever eaten, would probably be, let me think. Many, many years ago, I went on a tour with school, and we went to the Sharks Board, where um, they're in charge of managing the shark nets and things like that off the coast of South Africa. And I remember them letting us taste, I believe it was shark fin, whatever, from these sharks that had been caught in the nets. And that was just incredibly fishy. um, Definitely not something I enjoyed, to be honest. That wasn't a great dish, but it wasn't something that I have made. Um, Yeah, blade steak is pretty difficult. Having it braising it for a long period of time might be the way to go if you're trying to help a blade, but you really then want to do it as a stew or something like that, as opposed to just as a steak. It's going to be very hard to get it as tender as you want it without doing that. Um, All right, so I'm starting to slowly run out of questions that were sent ahead to me in the comments below the video. So I'll get through another one or two of those, and leave it open for you. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to type them in there right away. Um, this question says, you've done a bunch of Christmas recipes. Um, if you were making a Christmas gift box for someone you like, what would be in it, and what are your favorites? Definitely cookies. I mean, like I love giving cookies, and I love giving. Um, I love that sort of sweet profile. Definitely cookies, mincemeat pies, that kind of thing, all that sort of festive stuff that you get. Um, so yeah, that's kind of tricky, but definitely many of the cookies that I've done already. I'll tell you, I didn't see your question at all. If you want, it may have just come through too fast because I do have the slow on, so I'm not may not necessarily be seeing all of your questions right away if you typed it too fast after your previous comment. So if you want to just wait until a minute has gone by and then resend that question, please. Shaniri, okay, let me answer that question for you. Shaniri asked, must one always measure? I always just go as the spirit leads. Well, it depends on what you're doing. If you are just cooking and you're doing something on the stovetop and it's a dinner, a meal like that, I go as the spirit leads. I fully go with what I'm feeling at the time, what flavors I'm sort of craving or feeling with it. I love to experiment like that with dishes in the kitchen, and have had quite a lot of success. And a lot of that success is what ends up as being recipes on the channel. However, baking tends to be a little bit more of a science. And so, if you want certain things to happen with baking, you really do have to measure, you do have to follow recipes until you are really comfortable with adjusting things like moisture content and things like that to get a desired result. And you get to learn by feel and by environment and by experimentation, what actually works to get the desired result out of what you're baking. But cooking on the stovetop, go as the spirit leads, absolutely. Okay, Otalia, where are you hoping to go through channel, and what does the future hold for Jay's Kitchen? Well, that's an interesting and really good question. So thank you very much for that. I feel like there's a little bit of insider knowledge there. So I'll answer that. So right now, I am actually in the process of moving. So what you're going to see is over the next few weeks, you will see still some more videos in the studio. And there may be a slight decline in how frequent videos occur while I'm in that sort of transition. But what you'll start seeing is a little bit more of an off-grid flair to some of these recipes and dishes. So I am actually planning on moving off-grid. So you'll see that happening in the coming months until I get to a point where I have another kitchen set up ready to go, but probably a lot more sort of rustic cooking, a lot more rustic recipes and sort of out there in the world kind of recipes and things like that. I'm hoping to as well be able to do some more lives, not just as Q&As, but as cooking and things like that. Other things to look forward to, if you sign up for a channel membership, what I'll be doing in there, and I'll post the link on how you can become a member of the channel. Hey, Sue, thank you so much for the super chat. I really appreciate that. That helps support this channel so much. So you can actually also join the channel with a membership. And what I'll be doing there is sort of very quick kitchen tips and hints and things like that. Because that those subscribers will actually help maintain this channel while we go through all these changes and we're building up an audience. So that I hope that answers your question, Natalia. Sue, what's the recipe you want to try? to make about 500. That's a great question, Sue. Honestly, I have so many of my recipes that I've done have at some point been intimidating. Usually, what it is because you look at the ingredients list and it's this, you know, arm's length, a number of ingredients, and you look at it and you go, this is too overwhelming. This is too much. So that is there's I've gotten over that to an extent now. I do try to attack those recipes by looking at the ingredients, breaking them down into components, and things like that. One of the things that I would like to do as for members of the channel is to actually break down how to look at a recipe from a simple recipe down to a really complex one, and how to break that down into parts that you can put together so that the overall recipe becomes a lot less intimidating. So there are a couple still to come. I don't want to give away too many secrets, but there are definitely some, and I try and mention when I find them intimidating. I really do try and mention them in the video itself. And having done, quite a few sort of more complex recipes, I used to be so intimidated in the kitchen, and I think that's one of the main reasons why I do this channel, is because I really feel that if I can do it, anyone can do this, and anyone can enjoy cooking. And it doesn't have to be scary, and it doesn't have to be this hugely intimidating thing. It doesn't have to be this scary sort of nightmare place to be. Eric's question: if you had a box of money in your kitchen like Sue, what rare or posh dish would you cook? Oh, honestly, I'm not a posh person, so to speak. I'm I'm more a down to earth home cooking kind of guy. I think if I had a pot of money for that, I would have, okay, see, unlimited money. I would literally love to find people who are really good at the traditional dishes of their countries and their cultures, and invite them in to cook a dish with me, and teach me their methods and their thought processes behind putting together their recipes. I would really enjoy that. I would absolutely love to be able to explore other cultures' foods in that way. But really, for me, I'm not a posh dish kind of guy. I really am not. Michael, cooking with live feed might be so interesting and possibly fun. 100%. I definitely think so. The technical logistics of that are a little bit tricky. Purely, and I'm working on it. Please don't misunderstand. I am definitely working on trying to make that a possibility. It is difficult from the logistics point of view, because I don't film in an actual kitchen, because I'm filming in a studio which looks like a kitchen, but is not. And that makes it a little bit harder. But as I say, in the future, as I plan to go off grid and things like that, it's probably going to be more so. The technology is certainly there now, using just a phone and things like that. And yeah, I would actually really like to. The biggest thing for me is being able to see viewer comments while I'm while I'm live, and the logistics of setting up a larger screen from a distance so people can see what I'm doing and edit that would be great. So, could you be thrown into a kitchen and make something unexpected? Think like them? No. I mean, yes and no. Uh, I suppose the answer is technically yes. Would I want to be? The answer is no. I do like. I do like to be slightly challenged, but I don't want to. I don't want to be so thrown in and, well, here's your random ingredient and that kind of thing. I could do it. I could come up with a meal with stuff that's on hand, which is, I mean, I do that sometimes, and I do that when I sort of experiment with recipes. But do I want to? Of course, is the question. And sometimes that's no. And there are days where, if I had an endless pantry of everything that I wanted, I would happily spend hours and hours and hours just cooking and trying things out and things like that. But of course, with food costs going up, it makes it also hard to experiment quite as much as I would like. Well, thank you, Michael. That's awesome. Yeah, and I think the thing is that a lot of people feel very intimidated by cooking and by kitchens and things like that, and it's very easy to feel overwhelmed and feel like you can't do it as well as someone else can. I think what's important is to remember that everyone started somewhere. We've all had disasters in the kitchen. We've all had, some kind of challenges when we first started. I make disasters all the time, and I make mistakes all the time. The joy about doing a channel like this is I can cut those out. I can edit them out. There's a lot of times that people don't see the things that happen behind there, and I very specifically edit that out because I'm doing this to show how you can do something and not how to fail at it. And I hope that that's not an intimidating thing, because I think it's so important to encourage people to cook. And I think the most rewarding thing for me on this channel is when someone says, hey, I cooked this dish that I have never done before. My favorite is a friend of mine who messaged after watching my bagels recipe, had never baked anything in his entire life before, and made his own bagels, and now that's just what he does, and he just makes his own bagels all the time. And that, I think, is what is so rewarding for me. I really do like to hear of people that haven't done something before and then taken the time and learned, and I've helped to facilitate that. So thank you. I'm glad to hear that the channel is helping, and I really do appreciate that. Excuse me. What was your most memorable disaster? That's a tough one. It's funny because for the last 2 years, so I've been doing this channel for 2.5 years. It'll be 3 years in March. This isn't so much a disaster as like sort of cutting room floor stuff. I actually have attempted 3 times to do the same recipe, and for whatever reason, I don't know that I'm intimidated, but I think I'm just not satisfied with the end results. That I keep going back to the same recipe, redoing the same recipe, filming the same recipe, and then stopping, and that's actually sugar cookies, which is interesting. Like I've legitimately done that 3 times, filmed it 3 times, and I think what happens is it's like I watch some of the other channels and some of the other chefs and stuff that I follow, who do these sugar cookies. You look at them and they look like they were perfectly designed and perfectly sculpted and what have you with their royal icing. And I look at what I make, and I'm like, yeah, that's just not up there. And so that always ends up on the cutting room floor, time and time again. Um, I don't know. Maybe this year I will actually post it. I don't know. But as far as disasters go, really nothing major. I think I've had a couple of breads that I have done have turned out really horrible. Um, but there's nothing sort of major. Touch wood, because I haven't had any major disasters. Things failing or stuff. Um, well, Sue, yes, to answer your question, it probably is. I actually really like sugar cookies, and that's why I keep doing the recipe. I really do. I have a lot of fun, and I have a lot of fun uh, decorating them. I just don't feel that my decorating skills are quite up there with others. Um, but yeah, and I think a lot of that is there's a South African cookie called an iced zoo cookie, which is a sugar cookie with royal icing on it, that I really like, and so I keep trying to recreate that, inserting that flavor profile. And that's yes, so it is a way, probably a subconscious way to eat more failed sugar cookies. I definitely do enjoy them, and definitely do enjoy cookies. So thank you for that. Yet again, really, this channel, guys, is about helping people and about showing people that being in a kitchen and cooking and baking and things like that don't have to be intimidating, and they can be super super easy to do if you take the time and you follow the recipe. One of the things that really helped me when I was starting out was literally what I do, and you see it in the show, you see it in every episode, where I measure out all of my ingredients first, and I have them all ready to go before I start putting it together. And I do that for a couple of reasons. One, because it helps me arrange all of the ingredients. So even if it's a short list of ingredients or if it's a very long list of ingredients, you have them laid out, and you can lay them out then in the order that the method tells you to add them. That just helps that very big recipe become less intimidating. And so that's definitely a trick that I use a lot, and I use it on for myself, to make sure that I can I can follow a recipe, and it's a good way, especially with a new recipe. If you are trying to get something done the way so and so made it, and you're following that exact step, that's a really good way to overcome that feeling that that a recipe is intimidating. Is basically get all your ingredients and put them out one at a time, into measure them out correctly and add them one at a time like that. All right. As far as other questions that go from the comments from previous comments, actually only have two more. So please feel free, if you're watching right now and you do have more questions, feel free to drop them into the comments there. But I'll deal with these questions. You did a show on canning tomatoes. What do you do when they run out? Is there a canned tomato you like as much as homemade? There's very little that is quite as good to me as homemade. And really, I'm not brand picky, as it were. I do try and look for local, and by local I mean within Canada, brands if I can. Um, but I will say that there are a couple of Italian brands out there that are sometimes quite hard to source and find, but definitely well worth it if I do run out. Generally speaking, I tend to run out right as tomatoes are starting to actually ripen. So, fortunately, I've been able to go to farmers markets and things like that, and up that the quantity of tomatoes. But definitely having the fresh homemade one is by far better. It's quite a popular video, actually, the diced tomatoes video. And it is something that I do quite often as a in the fall because it's pretty pretty straightforward to do. It takes a bit of time, but it's absolutely worth it because you can can it and it lasts a very long time. But it's a lot of work and it does take a couple of days worth of work. I have some very large pots that I do it in when I'm actually canning. And For those of you that don't or haven't seen that one, I'll quickly drop that link in the comments there as well. um, just a comment on the satisfaction of watching pastry chefs. Yeah. Oh, 100%. The watching these pastry chefs and some of the confectioners that I follow. I follow a ton of channels on YouTube. I follow a ton of them on Facebook as well. Some of these people are their artistry is just incredible, and I'm not so much intimidated as blown away and kind of like, well, I don't even feel like I can put mine out there in case someone compares. I really hate those very judgy sort of comparison videos, the sort of side by sides. There's a couple of people that I've stopped following because they started doing that, and I think the thing I don't like about that is that every chef, there's no rule book. There's if you're going to follow a set of rules for anything, you know, you should follow your own rules. And I think everyone's kitchen is different, everyone's style is different, and everyone's methods are different. I don't think that there's a lot of people who have a lot of really great advice and really great methods and that kind of stuff. And if there's very specific things that you want to do and you want to get them exactly right how they're supposed to be, absolutely go and follow the sort of step-by-step instructions. But when it comes to creating in a kitchen, it can be very intimidating and very concerning that someone's going to judge you for failing. And I think that's why I don't like that those sort of reaction videos, as I think they're called. It doesn't sit well with me because not everyone has unlimited access or the same experience as you do. Doesn't mean that their efforts are worthy of that kind of criticism. Sue, living off grid, what are you looking forward to growing, harvesting? Will you have livestock? So actually really looking forward to having a variety of fresh produce. It's pretty tricky. Where I'm moving to is got a very short growing season. So it'll be a lot of relying on other farmers and homesteaders to begin with as I establish that. But really looking forward to having that sort of access to fresh produce. And yes, I do intend to have certainly some chickens, perhaps some goats, and things like that, some pigs. But it's going to be a long, slow process building that up over time, as it were. Is anyone, any South Africans still in the chat? If there's any South Africans in there, please just give a shout out so that I know that you're in there before I ask this last question, because I have not heard of this, and so I'm hoping that there's a South African or two in here still. Okay, so there we go. All right, so maybe you can answer this, because this is not something that I've ever had, and certainly not. I don't know where or how this question came up, so maybe you can help. The question was, hey, how do you feel about malva pudding with frozen custard? I've seen the recipe, but is it worth making? I I have not actually had that. I mean, like, I've had malva pudding because I made the recipe for that, and I absolutely love malva pudding. Um, I don't see any reason why having it with custard, like frozen custard, would be bad. I mean, who doesn't like malva pudding? Um, yeah, I've just never heard of that as a combination. I am used to having it, warm, so that's an interesting one. Oh, okay. So yeah, that's basically, I suppose, an ice cream, a kind of, I suppose, a regular custard that is whipped and frozen like an ice cream. That was an interesting question. Whoever sent that, if you want to private message me, or even in the comments below this video, please give me the link to the recipe that you find. I'd actually be very interested to look into that and perhaps give it a try, because, like I say, I'm not familiar with that at all. All right, guys. Are there any other questions before we end this? Yeah. Um, it's certainly an interesting. I mean, like, I love ice cream, really like ice cream, um, but yeah, I haven't either, specifically Otelia. So thank you, Sue. Yes, it was great to see you guys too. Thank you all so much for joining this morning, and thank you all so much for your questions. Please remember that you can help this channel very simply, by sharing content. So whether it's on Facebook, from the Facebook page, Instagram, here on YouTube, sharing links to your favorite recipes. Now there's another cool feature as well. If you really like one of the videos that I do, or if it's helped you in any way, you can give a super thanks on each of those videos, and that actually is a monetary way to support that video, which is always appreciated. Remember as well that we now have memberships that start at $4.99 a month, and there'll be a bunch of benefits that I'll be adding over time to those memberships. As well, don't forget that there's the channel store, and that is also on the main channel there. Check out the cool swag, like the shirt that I'm wearing, which I'll show you, and of course, things like coffee mugs and aprons and stuff like that, and all of that is really appreciated. Other than that, I will answer Otea's question. Will you be doing more plant-based vegetarian meals going forward? You will probably see a lot more, yes. Although not going completely vegetarian, but there will be a lot more interesting stuff with vegetables going forward. All right, guys. If there's no other questions, thank you again so much, all of you, for joining. Those who have given super chats today, thank you so much for all your support, and thank you all for spending some time with me today, and asking your questions and having a really good chat. I thoroughly enjoyed this. I think we should do this again very soon. And I actually really do, and I really like the suggestion of doing a live cooking, a live recipe. So keep an eye out for that. I'm sure we'll be doing that very soon. Thank you so much again, guys, for joining. I really appreciate having you here.